In this video, we're going to be learning how to customize our presentation such that it can actually be printed in what we call handouts. And so if we have an audience that is viewing our presentation and they'd like to take notes on the slides, it's helpful for them to have handouts that include smaller versions of the slides with space for them to take notes. So that's what we mean by handouts. So we have to add some notes, customize the notes pane itself, and then print handouts based on the notes that we've added. Okay, so again, in this case, I'm adding notes to the presentation itself, and then those are the notes that I'm going to print. It could be that, again, there's space for the audience to also include notes of their own. So again, the notes pane can be used by both me and by the audience to complete the presentation, or complete the understanding of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started on slide 1 here. In the status bar, which is at the very bottom here, we have this option that says Notes. I can click on that to see the notes of the current slide or to hide the notes of the current slide. Let's make sure that we can see the notes of the current slide, and we're going to type on this first slide, kickoff meeting to discuss project scope and expected outcomes. Okay, from there we're going to go to the Notes Master, and what the Notes Master allows us to do is it allows us to change the notes pane that is going to appear on our handouts, and it's going to mean that all of the notes panes of these slides can be changed at once. Let's click on the View tab, let's go to the Master Views group, and let's click on Notes Master, and here we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this notes placeholder down here, and we want to change this. We want to change its shape fill. So let's click on the Drawing Tools Format tab, or the Shape Format tab as it's called, and let's change the shape fill of this particular content rectangle to white background 1, darker 15%. Okay, so we'll give it that gray background there. And in the Notes Master tab, right over here on the left, again, this is only visible when we are in the Notes Master. Okay, so that's why you might not have seen that one before. But in the Notes Master tab, we're going to go ahead and click on Close Master View to return to our regular view. Now what we want to do is we want to view this in Print Preview to see what our audience would actually be given if these pages were to actually be printed. Let's click on File and then Print. Okay, and so this is the presentation itself, but we don't want that. We want the notes pages. So where it currently says full page slides, click on that drop-down menu and then change it to notes pages, and then you'll be able to see what we would print. Okay, so we can see that it's including the notes that I added myself, and it's also giving our audience room to add their own notes. Let's go back to the normal view now by hitting the Escape key. That's going to allow us to exit our Backstage view and return to this workspace. And let's now go to the so we went to the Notes Master to see how the notes are going to look. Let's go to the Handout Master to see how everything will look. So let's click on the View tab, let's click on Handout Master. Okay, and in the footer placeholder, let's just type the following. Let's type River Power Plant. So again, in the notes view, we could print out what we just viewed before, or we could print it in Handout Master. It just depends on what our preferences are and how much information is actually on the slide. If there's a lot of information on the slide, you'll want to do it the first way. If there's not too much information on the slide at all, then you might want to do it this way, where you're containing maybe 6 or 2 slides on each page of the handout instead of just one big slide and then all the room for text. Okay, so let's now that we've added the footer placeholder, let's click on the header up here, and let's go ahead and delete it with our delete key. Okay, because let's say we're not going to use a header. And in the page setup group over here on the top, we're going to go to slides per page and select 2 slides. Okay, so we're only going to show us 2 slides on each page of these handouts. let's now go to the File tab and then go to Print, and then what currently says Notes Pages from before, let's go there, and instead of choosing Notes, let's click on the well, if we could click on Outline, that would just show us all of the aspects of the presentation. So that's one way that we can provide our audience with handouts that would be useful to them. Another way is if we go to File, if we go here again and then we go to 2 slides, then we'll get an idea of what it would look like at this moment. Okay, so in this case, these handouts we would just print out, and you can see that there's space between the slides and on the edges for individuals to take notes, and they can even write on the slides themselves. Okay, so it just depends on what our audience is expecting of us in terms of how much space they need to take notes, in terms of how much paper we want to use, etc. Let's click on the Export button now, and if we click on the Export button, you'll see that there's an option that says Create Handouts. So let's click on that, and by creating the handouts, it's actually just going to create them in a Word document. So let's just go with all of the defaults and then click on OK. And then if we open our Word document, then this is what we're going to see. Okay, so you can see that on our Word document we have a series of slides, slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, etc. And from there we can just add our own information sort of to our heart's content. And there's ways to customize that export process, but we're not going to really look into that. So let's go ahead and close. The important thing is that you just know how to export it itself. Okay, so we'll close that without saving it or anything. And we're going to go back now to File, Save As. So we're back in PowerPoint now. File, Save As, Browse. And one thing we're going to do is we're going to save this presentation and we're going to embed fonts in the presentation. And what that just means is that any fonts that are copy-pasted into the presentation will be saved in the presentation itself. Okay. So let's go ahead now, and where it says Save As, we're going to go to Tools, Save Options, and we're going to scroll down, and then where it says Embed Fonts in the File, okay, you'll see that there are 2 options here. We'll just go with the first option, and we're going to click on OK. So don't worry about the details of that. Just know how to embed fonts in the file. And as you can see by the screen tip, it just means that typically the fonts in PowerPoint are just visible to our audience merely because they have the fonts already downloaded on their computer because they have PowerPoint 2019. But if we are assuming that we're sending this file to those who don't have PowerPoint 2019, maybe an earlier version, it's possible that we are using a font that is not available on that other person's computer, and so we actually save the way that the font looks in the file itself. That's what we mean by embed fonts in file. Don't worry about the specifications below. Just go ahead and click on OK. Just always go with the default. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and save this entire presentation.